I think it's very important in the era that we live in that is so vastly populated with weak men and very weak women. Um, and when I say weak men, I'm speaking about men that are more effeminate, um, and women that are more masculine. Both are weak on each side. But in regards to men, I think it's important that we examine the lives of our heroes in the Bible, the ones that we know of which um, that the Bible describes their youthful existence, that a lot of them as teenagers, the lives of Joseph and David, young David and Daniel, even young Timothy. I think it's good, especially for us men who are Christians, to examine their early lives as much as possible, because it's important to always remember that wisdom is not a birthright. Wisdom is acquired through experience. And this is why it's important to, I always tell people, listen, always listen to somebody who's older than you. I don't mean do what they say all the time, but I'm saying listen to them, give them the time. If they're trying to tell you something for your betterment, don't brush it off. That's a foolish thing. I see young people do that all the time. They don't want to listen to people older than them because they think, "Oh, you old. You don't. Your time has passed. You don't know what. You don't know what's going on." That's ridiculous. That's foolishness. Okay, we've all been young. We've all gone through the same things, different eras, different times. It may have looked a little different, but it was pretty much the same. And so, for the young people, the young men, listen to older men who are seeking to advise you on something. One of the greatest mistakes a young person can do is to not listen to your elder. It's not young ladies not listening to older women. Okay. That's how we fall into the errors of our life. That's how we fall into the sinful ways that cause such destruction that last a lifetime, is by not listening to people older than us who have gray hair, who have earned that wisdom because they've experienced it and gone through it and learned that was wrong. Okay. And so what I'm constantly doing is I'm 40 years old. I was just thinking the other day, actually, I'm 41. Wow. I was just thinking the other day. I remember when I was 15. It was like yesterday. It came and it went that fast. Tomorrow I'll be 60, and then the day after I'll be dead. I mean, life is it's going, and there's no way to stop it. Okay? And the decisions you make today are going to affect you, and not just you, but your children. Okay? And so it's so important that we, or that you as young men and women, make the right and proper decisions today. And when we look at the lives of men like David, or my favorite, Joseph, right, who was basically sold into slavery at the age of 17 and spent the next 13 years imprisoned. The life of Joseph is so amazing, especially on the topic of prayer. Because so often people think that if God doesn't respond to my prayer immediately or today or tomorrow, that he doesn't hear me, that he doesn't care. I think all the time about Joseph in that cell, praying to the Lord, getting up every day, holding the faith. Okay, I know there were days, I know there were for Joseph where he was thinking, God's done with me. He has to be done with me. I know there were days where he was just broken. Okay, but God sustained him, and that sustaining looks like every day Joseph getting up and renewing his faith by looking to Christ, looking to God. God kept him in a way that God keeps us. If you are a Christian, God is keeping you. If you woke up today a believer, it's because God is upholding you, sovereignly upholding you. If he stopped right now, you'd be back in the world just like that. Okay. So every day, if every day you wake up believing in the Lord, every day you wake up wanting to go into his word, wanting to speak to him and to renew a passion for him through prayer, and to fellowship with him in prayer and foster that relationship. That's not natural. That's not normal. That's supernatural. Okay. And it's God upholding you. Okay. And so when I look at Joseph in seasons where I'm praying for something, I've been praying for 3 months. I'm going to continue praying until the Lord answers. I think about Joseph when I get weak. Man, he was in that cell for 13 years, over a decade, and he remained faithful. And the truth is, it's important to, if you're in a season of praying for something that you need, it's always important to understand, acknowledge what God has done for you. Okay, because so often people get into this fog where they're just looking at God in this phase of unanswered prayer, and they're saying, God, you're not answering my prayer. You don't care about me. But you woke up today. You had a roof over your head. You've probably got AC on in your house or heat in the wintertime. You've got food in your fridge. You've got transportation. You probably have a job. You've got money in your bank account. Okay. God is providing. He's taking care of your needs. Okay. And what does the word tell us? It also tells us not to worry about tomorrow. Okay. For you don't know if you have tomorrow. Okay. So there is a reality in the scripture that focus on today, worry about today, and let God deal with tomorrow. And so when we look at the lives of a young Timothy who came under the admonishment of his elder brother Paul, and it's there has to be respect. And that's one thing that I'm noticing that these young people today, they don't have. They do not have respect for their elders. Okay, it's gone. When I was coming up, I came up in the 90s, and listen, I knew kids that were gang banging, straight gang bangers, Crips. I remember watching some of them. They would open doors for elderly people. If you cussed at somebody that was an elder or something, you would get jumped. Okay. I remember back in the early 90s, older kids that were actively gang banging, shooting, drug dealing, all that. They had respect for their elders. There were things you better not have done. I remember hearing about there was Sunday truce day basically, and I was in California. I lived in California at the time, and I remember a friend's older brother telling me about how in LA that there was basically in certain neighborhoods a truce where it was a ceasefire on Sunday, the Lord's Day. You didn't, you stayed in the house, or you either stayed in the house or you went to church. So even back then, even gang members had respect for the things of God. Today, it's just these kids today are just, they don't respect their teachers. They're hitting on their teachers, literally physically punching their teachers. It's just, my heart goes out to public school teachers today because they're dealing with a struggle that teachers in the 90s, the 80s, I'm not saying there weren't struggles back then, but today, what teachers have to deal with is absolutely insane. See, at least in the 90s, at least teachers could go to the parents, the child's parent, and at least the parent and the teacher could be on the same page, right? A lot of times the teacher all they'd have to say is, do you want me to call your mom? Do you need me to call your dad? And we would get in shape. Or do you want to go to the principal's office? And we would get in shape because there was literal fear, real fear, right? That's gone today. Okay. You tell a kid today, you want me to call your mom? They're like, yeah, go ahead. I'll call my mom for you. And they're doing that because they know mom's going to agree with them. Mom's going to have their back and go against the teacher. And so it's just a complete lack of respect. Okay. And I think the largest reason for that is there are no more men in these households. Okay. These kids are growing up with nothing but feminine energy, feminine rebellious energy. Okay. And there is no supreme statue in there. There's no structure in their household. Okay. There's no fear. Okay. No one has any bass in their voice in their household. And it just is so destructive. And so I think it's just important to look at some of the young men. I think one of the funniest instances in the Bible is King Rehoboam, Solomon's son. Listen, if you've read the Old Testament, okay, you probably know of the story when King Rehoboam was basically getting ready to take over and become king. And he had his group of friends, his teenage friends, and then he had the elders, the ones that his father would counsel and go to for advice and things like that. And these older gentlemen came to King Rehoboam and basically told him, listen, you're working these people too hard. Your father was hard, but you're going too hard. And we're telling you, don't do that, because if you continue, you're going to lose us. And instead of taking the wisdom from the elders, he said, y'all old. Y'all don't know what y'all talking about. He listened to his friends, and his friends said, hey, let's take him. Let's work him to death. Let's just, let's rule them like just a king without any type of uh, grace. We're just going to run him into a nub. And the people ended up rebelling and ran him out of his own kingdom, and literally ran him out to the point where he had to get on his horse and flee in fear. And so, there are a lot of instances in the Old Testament where, you can learn from these men how not to do things. And I think it's important for older men to take someone young, a younger guy, up under his wing, especially someone who may not have a father figure. That's so important. A lot of the guys that I know who are successful today who did not have a father in the home, it was because they were a part of some group, whether it be the YMCA or a youthful men's organization group, where they were able to sit under an older guy who was able to put them under their wing and show them the ropes. And so what you see a lot is successful men were usually at some point in their life able to come under the wise counsel of a wiser older man. It's so important. So I'm looking at examining the young men in scripture, Daniel as well, who was exiled as a teenager, the courage of Daniel and his three friends. It's just amazing. And that's another thing, courage. Now we know that a lot of the courage of men like David, young David, that comes from God's hand being on these men at that particular time. But that doesn't mean that we can't be courageous as well. That young men today can't be courageous, or that they shouldn't seek to jump at opportunities to be courageous. That's part of what being a man is. And it's important to understand that courage is not the absence of fear. A lot of times when people look at people like David and how he could step to someone like Goliath, listen, it wasn't because he wasn't afraid. Okay. People who are courageous are afraid. The difference between the courageous and the cowardly is the courageous are able to push through that fear because, how can I put this? The courageous are afraid, but in the moment of fear, they're able to persevere through it because, I don't know how to word it, but basically to define courage is a man or woman who is able to persevere through a fearful situation for the betterment of others. So let me give an example. Okay. There's a video on YouTube of a dad who is picking up his daughter for school, and his daughter looked to be anywhere from age 3 to 5, just a sweet little young girl. And she had her little pigtails and she had her backpack, and the dad is walking her down the steps of the porch. And then all of a sudden you see in the video this woman like across the street, like screaming at her dog, and it's like a big pit bull dog, and the dog gets off the leash and just starts sprinting across the street. And the dad sees it, and his first thought was to scream out, run, and jump on top of a car. The only problem is he left his daughter on the ground. So the dad is on top of the car like a coward, and he's basically telling his daughter, run, 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 baby girl, run. And the little girl is running around the car screaming, daddy, daddy, daddy. And the dog runs up. The dog is not even trying. The dog wanted to play. He's looking at the little girl while she's screaming for her daddy. And this big coward is standing on the car while his daughter is down there. Okay. With the dog. The dog ends up running back to its owner. Okay. I would rather die I would rather die than that be me, that man. I'd rather die. Okay. Now, me in that situation, okay, I'm going to tell my daughter to run back up the steps and I'm going to go run to the dog. I'm going to go run to meet the dog. Does that mean I'm not afraid? No, I'm afraid. But I would rather die than allow that dog to touch my daughter. I would literally rather die. So my desire for her protection super exceeds my fear. And that's the difference between the courageous and the cowardly. I would still be afraid. And I've been in situations where dogs have run up on us. I remember me and my family used to go for walks when we lived in Nashville, Tennessee. There was this park we used to go to. And at the time we had a dog. It was a little white Bichon. I think they were called Bichon. It was a little white Bichon. His name was Pierre. My mom named him Pierre. And I remember I was walking the dog and we were all as a family walking together. And there was this elderly couple. And they were walking towards us and they had a dog, and the dog was much bigger than ours. And for some reason, I let Pierre walk up and kind of sniff the dog, and all of a sudden the dog just latched on Pierre's throat, literally like at the back of his neck, and just started like swinging him around. And so in the instant, I think I was like 12 years old. I was 12 or 13. In the instance, I'm looking at the older men, like, is somebody going to do something? I look at the older guy that owns the other dog. He's in absolute fear. He's like he can't believe his dog is doing this. I look over at my dad. My dad is in fear. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm like, okay, nobody's going to do anything. So I jump in and I grab the dog and I just start pounding his face, just punching him. And I kept punching him until he squealed and kind of went away. And by that time, our dog was almost dead, literally. Like, he had 5 or 6 bites on his back and his neck. Blood was just flowing. I mean, I had to pick him up and carry him, but he would have died if I hadn't did something. There were a couple other times with dogs where I jumped in. Listen, that doesn't mean I wasn't afraid, but it meant every time that those situations happened, I was with family. And I wasn't going to ever allow anything to happen to family. And at that time, I believe that dog was my family. So, so courage, it's important that we as men be courageous. Okay. If you're a single man, one day, hopefully you will have a wife and then children. You need to be prepared to die for those people. That's your duty. Okay. If that happens, if something happens, if a man tries to harm your wife or your children, and see, a lot of times with Christianity, we have a lot of this, turn the cheek and, let people just beat on us. And there's a place for that. But then there's also a place to be a man and to be prepared to kill if need be. And I'm being dead serious. Okay. I'm being dead serious. Okay. There's a video online of this guy and his girlfriend, and they're in another country. I don't know which country they're in, somewhere in Europe. And they're standing looking at like some map. And you can look this video up. And all of a sudden, 3 guys jump out and they rush them. And they're like with a knife. One of them has a knife and or a stick or something. And immediately the boyfriend he just runs. He shrieks and runs away from the girlfriend. And the girlfriend is literally tussling with the guys, slapping them, and she's not letting them take her bag. And, and then she's tussling with them long enough for some, bystanders to come over and help her. And then the boyfriend's you can see him on the corner of the video, kind of like looking around the corner, like, is everything okay? Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. Don't be that man. Don't be that guy. Okay. Don't be that guy. Please do not be that person. Okay. Listen, you don't have to be the toughest guy. You don't have to be the best fighter. You just have to be a man willing to lay your life on a line for a woman and your children. Okay. Don't be that guy. I remember in high school, there was this kid. He was like 90 pounds, right? Scrappy little kid. He couldn't fight, but he had the heart of a lion. The heart of a lion, and he was respected from all the grade kids. He was respected. So masculinity is something that I really want to start touching on. What it means to be a man, what it means to be a man that loves a woman well, a man that loves his neighbors well, a man that loves the brethren well, but a man that is also a man. Okay. A man that's also able to do masculine things. Right. And so yeah, I'm just gonna keep making these videos, keep talking. This helps me. It helps me prepare. My church has decided to give me a bigger role. One of our older brothers, Joe, has decided to step away and go to another church. It's not him stepping away from the faith or anything like that. It's just there were some disagreements with him and some of the elders, and he's still a brother. He's still a dear brother, but he's decided to step away and help out his church, which is a school he basically runs with some other brothers. And so I've been asked to step into a more prominent role in regards to leading Bible studies and things of that nature. And so just making these videos, these long, boring videos, it helps me. And if it helps you, that's awesome. But yeah, I'm going to focus on wisdom and youthfulness and maturing and becoming young men and older men taking younger men under your wing to help them. This is all important.